Every morning starts the same way. I wake up at 5 a.m., even though it's been a long time since I've needed to get behind the wheel of a truck. My body remembers the schedule better than my mind. My little room is quiet. There's hardly any room to live in. A bed, a bedside table, a small closet. It used to be a guest bedroom, but now it's my corner. In my own house. I walk out into the kitchen, trying not to creak the floorboards. Veronica and Ted are sleeping in the master bedroom, the same one where I spent 42 years with my Esther. Once upon a time, I used to rock little Veronica there when she came to stay with us. I put the kettle on and look out the window at the mountains in the distance. Laramie is a small town sandwiched between plains and ridges. I've lived here all my life. Every street holds memories. This is where Esther and I walked after our wedding. This is where our first supermarket opened. And this is the square where I first held my newborn granddaughter in my arms. The kettle starts to whistle, and I quickly take it off the stove. I don't want to wake the young ones. Our schedules don't match. I'm an early bird. They're owls. Different generations, Veronica often says, rolling her eyes. I make myself some toast with jam and sit by the window. The house is quiet, with only the clock ticking on the wall, an old mechanical clock. Ted has offered several times to replace it with a smart one, but I've refused. This clock was a gift from Esther for our 20th anniversary. An hour later, Veronica enters the kitchen, wrapped in a robe. She is 34, but in the morning light, disheveled and sleepy, she reminds me of the little girl who used to visit us every summer. "Good morning, Clive," she says without a smile. She rarely calls me grandfather. "Good morning, Veronica. Coffee?" "I'll get it myself." She pulls a bag of expensive beans from the cupboard. "You're up this early again? I'm disturbing you with my walking." "I'm sorry," I replied absently, even though I was tiptoeing. Veronica works as a florist in a small store in the city center. Her love of flowers is the only thing she inherited from Esther. Outwardly, she looks nothing like her grandmother. Sharp features, dark hair, tall figure. In character, too. Where Esther was soft and patient, Veronica is sharp and impatient. "Do you have a late shift today?" I ask, trying to make conversation. "Uh-huh," she answers, looking at the phone. 12 to 8. "I can give you a ride if you want. Was going into town anyway." "No need." She doesn't even look up from the screen. "Ted will drive." I nod and finish my tea. The conversation isn't going as well as usual. 3 years ago, when she and Ted asked to stay with me temporarily until we got back on our feet, things were different. They were grateful. They helped around the house. Veronica even cooked dinners on weekends. But gradually, the temporarily became permanent, and gratitude was replaced by irritation. Ted enters the kitchen, already dressed in his office suit. He is 37 and works as a paralegal for a small firm. His blonde hair is neatly combed, and his thin-rimmed glasses give him an intelligent look. "Good morning," he nods at me. "Clive, did you touch the thermostat again? It was cold in the bedroom last night." "I didn't touch it," I say. "Maybe the batteries are dead in the remote control." "I changed them a month ago," Ted says grudgingly, pouring himself a cup of coffee. "Veronica, did you call about the internet? It was too slow again yesterday." "I forgot," she replies. "I'll call you today." I sit in silence. It's like I'm not in the room. They discuss their plans, their bills, their friends, a world in which I have no place. When I try to get a word in, they exchange glances that I've learned to recognize. The old man's minding his own business again. "By the way, Clive," Ted suddenly turns to me, "we're thinking of remodeling the backyard. That old barn is taking up too much space. We could make a barbecue area. The shed he wants to tear down, I built with my own hands 30 years ago. It still holds tools, fishing gear, old photo albums." "There's a lot of my stuff in there," I say. "I'll have to sort it out first." "Come on, Clive," Ted said. "It's just old stuff. We can put it on the flea market if you want. My memories are junk. My labor is a hindrance to their barbecue. I'm getting up from the table. I gotta go. I'm meeting Noah at 10. Chess again? Veronica rolls his eyes. Two old men move wood around the board. It's fun. I don't answer. I grab my jacket and car keys and leave the house. In the car, I can finally exhale. The old Ford is another place that is completely mine. The drive to Noah's house takes 15 minutes. He lives in a quiet neighborhood on the northern edge of Laramie. His house is smaller than mine, but cozier. It doesn't feel like you're a guest within your own walls. Noah opens the door before I can ring the bell. We've known each other since first grade in high school, and he always somehow senses my approach. "Clive!" He smiles broadly. 10 sharp, precise as a Swiss watch. Noah Page is the exact opposite of me. Where I'm heavy and clumsy, he's lean and agile. I've worked with my hands all my life, he's worked with his head. I'm reserved and taciturn, he's outgoing and eloquent. But somehow our friendship has survived the test of 60 years. "I made your favorite tea," Noah says as he walks me into the living room, and took out the cookies Helen had baked. Helen is Noah's sister who lives in a neighboring town and regularly sends him homemade baked goods. There's already a chessboard set up in the living room. We've played every Wednesday since we both retired. Noah has always been better at chess, but I don't give up without a fight. "How are yours?" Noah asks, pouring the tea. He's one of the few people who still remembers Esther, knows Veronica from childhood, met Ted. "Everything is the same," I answer, making my first move with my pawn. "I'm in the way. I don't understand. I'm behind the times." Noah frowns, moving his knight. "You know, Clive, I never told you this, but I think they're taking advantage of your kindness. They're young. They need help getting back on their feet." I repeat a phrase that has become my mantra over the years. 3 years, Clive. 3 years they've been on their feet in your house, on your money. Noah makes his next move, taking my pawn. Ted hasn't been working at a law firm for the last year. Veronica makes a steady income, too. Where's their own house? Where's the gratitude? I remain silent, pondering not so much the next move in the game, but my friend's words. "Remember how we dreamed of opening a fishing store?" Noah suddenly changes the subject. "Hawthorne and Page. Everything for real fishing." I smile. Noah and I were obsessed with fishing when we were young and planned to open our own tackle store. Of course I remember that, but then you went to law school and I went to drive trucks. "Still, the dream was good," Noah says, looking at the board. "It's never too late to go back to your dreams, Clive. We play, talking about the past, about current city news, about politics. Noah is easy. He listens. He asks questions. He argues. But he never looks at me with the condescending stare that Veronica and Ted do." "Checkmate," Noah announces after 2 hours. "But you came close to winning tonight. Next time, I promise," helping him clean up the pieces. "Are you staying for lunch?" Noah asks. "I've made a stew. There's enough for 2. "I'd love to," I agree, realizing I don't want to go home early. Over lunch, Noah talks about his last case before retiring, a complicated divorce where he represented the husband. He was a nice guy, but he let his wife boss him around for 20 years, and then she filed for divorce, saying he was keeping her from developing. Noah shakes his head. "You know what the saddest part is? The house was his inheritance from his parents. She insisted she was entitled to it because she put her soul into it, barely defended his estate." I shudder, sensing an uncomfortable similarity to my situation. "Noah, do you think—" I start, but I can't finish the question. "Do I think your granddaughter and her husband are counting on your house?" Noah asks bluntly. "Yes, Clive, I do. And I suggest you check your will. Who's the name of the house?" "Me, of course," I answer. "I never rewrote it." "And the will?" "When Esther died, everything should go to Veronica." Noah is silent, looking at me anxiously. "Clive, you're my oldest friend. Tell me honestly, Are they treating you well? I open my mouth, preparing to utter the usual excuses. They're just young. They have their own worries. Times have changed. But suddenly I realize I'm tired of lying, both to myself and to Noah. No, I say quietly. They're treating me like furniture. Uncomfortable, old furniture that can't be thrown away but takes up too much space. Noah nods, as if he's known the answer for a long time. Clive, I'll tell you as a friend and as a lawyer. You're 68. You've earned your peace and respect. This is your home, your money, your life. Don't let them take that away. I look out the window at the quiet street, at the fall trees. The thought I've been chasing away for years finally forms in my head. My house is no longer my home. I'm a stranger there. What do you suggest? I ask Noah. For starters, review the will, he replies, and think about whether you want to continue living like this. When I get home that evening, Veronica and Ted are still gone. I walk through the rooms, looking at them through the eyes of an outsider. The living room, where pictures of Esther and me getting married used to stand, is now decorated with modern abstract paintings that Veronica chose. The kitchen, where Esther used to bake her famous pies, is now littered with fancy kitchen gadgets that are hardly ever used. My bedroom became their bedroom, and I moved into a tiny room. In the evening, Veronica and Ted return, loudly discussing something. I sit in my room, but I can hear their conversation. And then Samantha says, "Is your grandfather still alive?" Veronica tells me with a laugh. I almost choked on my coffee. He leaves the house so infrequently that people think he's been dead a long time. They laugh. My heart sinks. I'm already a ghost to them. Speaking of Clive, Ted says in a quieter voice, but I can still hear. I've been looking at the plans for the backyard remodel. If you knock down the shed and squeeze in a little bit of his vegetable garden, you could make a great recreation area with a pool. A pool? Veronica exclaims. That would be wonderful. But Grandpa would never agree. He chafes over every tomato he grows. Honey, Ted's voice gets even quieter. Sooner or later the house will be ours. We can wait. At that moment, something breaks inside me. I look at Esther's picture on the nightstand, the only thing left untouched in this changed house. What would you do, Esther? I mentally ask. And for the first time in a long time, I feel clarity. I don't need to wait for their approval or gratitude. I need to take action. Tomorrow I will go to Noah again, and this time the conversation won't be about chess. After the conversation with Noah, I was slow to take decisive action. The habit of patience, of not rocking the boat, has been ingrained in me for many years of my life. My Esther used to say, "Clive, you're like an oak tree, angry to the last but never broken." I always thought it was a compliment. Now I wondered if maybe sometimes you should resist rather than bend. Saturday morning was clear and cool. Autumn in Laramie always comes suddenly. Yesterday it was warm, and today there is frost on the grass. I woke up earlier than usual, lay staring at the ceiling for a long time, then dressed quietly and went out into the yard. My shed, the same one Ted was so eager to tear down, was greeted by the smell of wood and machine oil. I ran my hand over the workbench I'd built with my own hands back in the 80s. Tools hung on the walls, each in its place. Fishing rods stood in the corner, covered with tarpaulin so they wouldn't get dusty. On the far wall were boxes of things I'd moved here when my room was downsized. I started going through these boxes, opening the lids, remembering. The wedding album, letters from Esther when I was away on long hauls, Veronica's old toys she'd left with us over the summer, photos from fishing trips, Noah and I, young, tanned with a catch of trout, a child's drawing, a crooked house with the inscription "For Grandma and Grandpa with love from Veronica." I didn't notice how the hours flew by. Suddenly the barn door swung open, letting in a flood of light and cold air. Ted stood on the doorstep in his house dress. "There you are," he said without greeting. "Veronica was looking for you. We're going to the building supply store. Need your credit card." I got up slowly, feeling my knees stiff from sitting on the floor for so long. "Why are you going to the hardware store?" I asked, even though I already guessed the answer. "We want to look at materials for the backyard. Maybe we should start with the patio." Ted looked around the shed with undisguised disdain. "There's a lot of junk in here. We'll have to get a truck to haul it away." "It's not junk," I said calmly. "It's my stuff, Ted. My life." "Come on, Clive," he dismissed it. "Half of this stuff should have been thrown out a long time ago. You don't use it all. Who needs old fishing rods and pictures?" "I do," I answered, feeling a wave of anger rising inside me. "I need it." Ted sighed with that peculiar expression he got whenever he thought I was an unreasonable old man. "Okay, we'll deal with this later. So you'll give me the map?" "We want to buy a new light fixture for the living room. That floor lamp you brought up from the attic doesn't fit in at all. The floor lamp was a wedding present from Esther's parents. They had it specially commissioned from a local craftsman. After Esther died, I moved it into the living room from the bedroom so I could see it more often." "No," I said, surprised at my own firmness. "No to what?" Ted didn't understand. "No, I won't give you a credit card. And no, you will not remodel the backyard without my consent, and the floor lamp will stay where it is." Ted stared at me as if I were suddenly speaking a foreign language. "Clive, don't be ridiculous. We just want to improve the house, make it more modern, more comfortable." "This house has been good enough for 3 generations of Hawthorns," I said, taking a step toward the door. "And I didn't authorize the remodeling. Jesus, what's the matter with you?" Ted didn't move, blocking the exit. "Veronica warned me you were getting more and more stubborn. We're trying to help you live a normal life and you're acting like a cranky child." I stared at him in silence. This man who had come to my house 3 years ago with 1 suitcase, and now he was telling me how I should live my life. "Let me through," I said quietly. "I want in the house." Ted reluctantly backed away and I walked past him. In the backyard, Veronica was standing by the rose bushes that Esther had once planted with a telephone in her hands. "Finally!" she exclaimed when she saw me. "We're late. Where's your map?" "I won't give you the map," I repeated. "And I won't agree to the remodeling of the yard." Veronica looked at me, then at Ted, who was following. "What's the matter?" she asked irritably. "Your grandfather has decided he knows best what a modern house should look like," Ted replied. "He said he wouldn't give us a map or let us change anything in the yard." "This is my house," I said, looking into my granddaughter's eyes. "I decide what I can and can't change here." Veronica squinted her eyes. When she was angry, her face was sharp, predatory, not at all like Esther's soft features. "Your house?" she asked with undisguised anger. "The one where we do all the work, cleaning, fixing, paying the bills." "You don't pay the bills," I countered. "I pay for everything: electricity, water, internet, insurance. I even paid for your car repairs last month." "Because you can afford it," Veronica exclaimed, raising her voice. "You've got a pension and savings, and we're trying to get back on our feet." 3 years, Veronica," I said, feeling my voice shake. 3 years you've been getting back on your feet. Where are your own savings? Where is your own home? You work as a florist, Ted as a paralegal. You have steady incomes." "And huge expenses," she countered. "Student loans, health insurance, a car, and a new cell phone every year," I added, "and a vacation to Mexico this summer, and designer clothes." "God, do you keep track of our spending?" Veronica shook her hands. "What is this? An interrogation? We don't have the right to a normal life?" "Yes," I answered calmly, "but with your money, not mine." Ted put his hand on Veronica's shoulder as if to restrain her. "Let's talk calmly," he said, speaking to me in that special tone of voice one uses with difficult children or feeble-minded old people. We're all tired. Clive, you spend a lot of time alone and it affects your mood. Maybe you should socialize more with people your own age. There are groups at the senior center. I don't need a senior center, I interrupted him. I'm doing just fine with Noah. And I'm not tired. I just don't want you running my house and my money like it's your own anymore. God, you're so selfish, Veronica exclaimed. We take care of you, and you… Care? I couldn't hold back a bitter laugh. You've crammed me into the smallest room. You threw away half my stuff. You don't listen to me. You don't respect me. What kind of care is that? We're forced to live in your museum, Veronica shouted, her face red with anger. Old furniture, old paintings, old habits. You don't want to change anything. You're stuck in the past and you're dragging us down with you. It's my past, I answered quietly. My life, my home. Your home, your home, Veronica mocked. You know what? You're a liability, Clive, a burden to us. We can't have a normal life because of your senile whims. The word burden hit me like a slap in the face. I looked at my granddaughter's angry face and didn't recognize her as the little girl who had once called me the best grandpa in the world. Veronica! Ted yelled at her, but it was too late. What? It's true! She wouldn't stop. He's controlling our every move. He won't let us live our lives, always with his old stories and pictures. Grandma Esther this, Grandma Esther that. I'm tired of it, tired of living with ghosts. I stood there, stunned by her words. My head was buzzing. My granddaughter had just called me a burden, called the memory of her grandmother ghosts. This was a person I didn't know, a stranger in my Veronica's body. I get it, I said quietly, feeling strangely calm. I understood everything. I turned and went into the house, ignoring Ted's shouts. In my small room, I sat down on my bed and pulled out my phone. My hands trembled slightly as I dialed Noah's number. Clive? My friend's voice sounded concerned. What's wrong? Noah, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. You were right. I can't stay here anymore. What happened? He asked seriously. I told him about the fight, about Veronica's words, about how they planned to use my credit card. Noah listened silently, not interrupting. Come to my place, he said when I was done. Right now. I have a spare room, you know. I don't want to be a burden, I said, my voice trembling. Clive Hawthorne, Noah's voice was steely. In 60 years of friendship, you've never been a burden to me. Don't start now. Pack your things and come over. Thank you, I said. But first I want to talk to you about something else, about the will. I'll be waiting, Noah said. And Clive, you're doing the right thing. After the conversation, I sat still for a few minutes, collecting my thoughts. Then I pulled an old suitcase out from under the bed and started putting things away. Not everything, just the essentials. Clothes, medicine, shaving supplies, Esther's picture in a silver frame, our wedding ring, which I kept in a small jewelry box, an album with our most treasured photos. There was a quiet knock on the door. I didn't answer it, continuing to pack. The door opened and Ted's face appeared in the doorway. Clive, he began in a conciliatory tone. Veronica didn't mean it. She was just angry. I folded the shirt in silence and put it in my suitcase. What are you doing? Ted asked, noticing me packing. Leaving, I said simply. Where to? He sounded worried. Somewhere I wouldn't be a burden. Clive, you're being dramatic. Veronica will apologize. We're all tired. We've all said too much. No, Ted. I zipped up my suitcase and stood up straight. Veronica said exactly what she thinks she said. And you know what? She's right. I really am a burden to you. I'm getting in the way of you living the life you want to live. That's why I'm leaving. But this is your home, Ted said, confused. Yes, I agreed. It's my home. And I decide what to do with it. I picked up my suitcase and headed for the door. Ted reluctantly stepped back. Where are you going? He asked, following me through the living room. To Noah's, I answered without stopping. He'd been asking me to move in for a long time. We ran into Veronica in the kitchen. She was standing at the window, still red with anger. When she saw me with the suitcase, she frowned. "What's the meaning of this?" she asked sharply. "It means I won't be a burden to you anymore," I replied calmly. "I'm going to Noah." "Because of one fight?" She rolled her eyes. "God, Grandpa, you're such a—" "No, Veronica," I interrupted her for the first time in a long time. "Not because of one fight. It was 3 years of neglect. Because I'm a stranger in my own home. Because you have no respect for me or the memory of your grandmother." Veronica opened her mouth, clearly ready for an angry rant, but suddenly she was silent, seeing something in my face. Perhaps a determination that hadn't been there before. "Where will you go?" she asked in a quieter voice. "To Noah," I said. "For how long?" "For good," I answered, looking into her eyes. Something flashed in her eyes, anxiety, uncertainty. She looked back at Ted. "Clive, don't get emotional," Ted began in his reasonable tone. "Let's talk this through. Veronica will apologize." "I'll be back for the rest of the stuff," I said, heading for the exit. "And we'll discuss the future of this house." "What do you mean, the future of the house?" Veronica followed me. "What do you have in mind?" I didn't answer, opened the front door and stepped out onto the porch. The day was cool but sunny. I set my suitcase at my feet and pulled out my car keys. "Grandpa," Veronica came out next, her voice softening. "I didn't mean to hurt you. I just told the truth," I finished for her. "And I'm grateful for that." You opened my eyes. I loaded the suitcase in the trunk and got behind the wheel. Through the windshield, I could see Ted and Veronica standing on the porch, confused and worried. Not because of me, because of the uncertainty of their situation. The drive to Noah's house seemed shorter than usual. Or maybe, for the first time in a long time, I felt like I was traveling not from something, but toward something, toward a new beginning. Noah was waiting for me on the porch, as if he knew the exact time of my arrival. When he saw my car, he got up and walked toward me to help me with my suitcase. "Welcome," he said, hugging me tightly. "I'm glad you've made your decision." "I'm not entirely sure I'm doing the right thing," I admitted as we entered the house. "You are," Noah said firmly. "I've known you your whole life, Clive. You've let them take advantage of you for too long." He ushered me into the guest bedroom, which was spacious and bright, with a large window overlooking the well-tended garden. There was a vase of fall flowers on the bedside table. "Helen came in this morning," Noah explained, catching my eye. "I told her you might be moving. She was excited. She said she'd bring pies for 2. I smiled, picturing Noah's good-natured sister and her famous apple pies. "Make yourself comfortable," Noah said, "and then we'll talk business." I laid out my things, showered, changed into clean clothes. For the first time in a long time, I felt free. I didn't have to tiptoe around for fear of disturbing the young ones. I didn't have to feel superfluous. Noah was waiting for me in his office, a small room filled with bookcases. On the desk were papers, a pen, a stamp. "Have a seat," he said, pointing to the chair opposite. "I've prepared the papers." "What papers?" I asked, though I already knew. "The change of will," Noah answered seriously. "Are you sure you want to exclude Veronica?" I thought about it. My granddaughter's face came into view, angry, contorted with rage as she yelled at me for being a burden. And then another face, the face of little Veronica, falling asleep in my arms after a long day at the lake. "Yes," I said at last. "I'm sure. But I want to leave her a small amount, enough so she won't need it, but not so much that she can splurge." Noah nodded and made a note in the papers. "And the house?" he asked. "Sell it," I decided, "when the time is right, and use the money for something worthwhile." "Like what?" Noah looked at me with interest. "Like a fishing store," I answered. and a wide smile appeared on my friend's face. We spent several hours discussing details and signing papers. Noah, as a former lawyer, knew all the ins and outs and pitfalls. By the time we were done, it was getting dark. "We have one more thing to do," Noah said. "Write them a letter." "Why?" I wondered. "I told them everything when I left." "No, Clive," Noah shook his head. "You'd said how you felt. Now you need to communicate your decisions. Clearly, without emotion. They need to understand the consequences." I took the piece of paper and pen Noah handed me and thought, what do I want to tell Veronica and Ted? What do they need to know? "Veronica and Ted," I began to write. "I learned today that I have become a burden to you. I have accepted that and am leaving so as not to interfere with your lives. I'm going to live with Noah Page. I'm stopping paying my house bills, including mortgage, electricity, water, and internet. All of these expenses are now on you. I have also changed my will. The house will no longer pass to Veronica when I die. I plan to sell it when the time comes. You have 1 month to find another place to live or start paying me market rate rent. Regards, Clive Hawthorne." I reread what I had written and held the sheet out to Noah. He read it, nodded, and put the letter in an envelope. "I'll send it by registered mail tomorrow," he said, "with a return receipt. Everything must be official." In the evening, we had dinner on the veranda. Noah opened a bottle of good whiskey that he saved for special occasions. "To new beginnings," he said, raising his glass. "To new beginnings," I echoed, feeling the warmth of the first sip. I slept better that night than I had in 3 years, without feeling like I was an extra in my own house. No fear of waking someone with my footsteps. Just slept like a person returning home after a long absence. The first week at Noah's went by in a strange daze. I would wake up in the morning and for a few moments I couldn't realize where I was. The sun was hitting the bed differently than it did in my little room in my own house. The sounds were different. I couldn't hear Veronica rattling dishes in the kitchen or Ted taking a shower singing his fancy songs. Instead, I heard the quiet humming of the refrigerator, the rustling of leaves outside the window, and the distant barking of the neighbor's dog. Noah didn't rush me through the adjustment. He showed me where everything was, gave me a spare key, and told me I was free to come and go as I pleased. I had my own bathroom, spacious, with a handrail by the tub that Noah had installed a few years ago after a minor fall. "Don't be as proud as I am," he said with a chuckle. "I almost broke my neck before I recognized that we old people need extra support." My friend retained the ability to laugh at himself, a quality I seem to have lost over the years with Veronica and Ted. With them, I was always on guard, afraid to say or do the wrong thing, to provoke their annoyance or ridicule. On the 3rd day, I decided to drive to my house to pick up some more things. Noah offered to go with me, but I declined. "I have to do this on my own," I said. "Besides, I don't think they'll be home at this time. Veronica's at work and Ted's at the office." Noah nodded, but still insisted I take his cell phone. "Mine's newer, with a better camera," he explained. "Just in case. If anything goes wrong, just call me on yours." I realized what he meant. If Veronica and Ted were home, if there was a conflict, Noah wanted me to be able to record everything. To my relief, the house was empty when I pulled up. The front door was unlocked. Veronica always forgot to lock it, no matter how many times I reminded her. I walked through the living room trying not to notice the clutter. Scattered magazines, cups of unfinished coffee, pizza boxes. Before, I would have automatically started cleaning up, but now it was no longer my mess or my concern. In my former room, I gathered the rest of my clothes, books, a few souvenirs I'd brought back from long trips. I found an old cufflink box, a gift from Esther for our silver wedding. Then I went to the barn. Here, among the tools and boxes of old things, I spent more time than I had planned. Each item evoked memories. The fishing tackle Noah and I used on Lake Cammer. The toolbox I used to build a swing for little Veronica. The photo albums that Esther had so carefully signed in her neat handwriting. I selected the most valuable things, what could be taken away at one time, and loaded them into the car. On my way back through the house, I noticed a stack of envelopes on the kitchen table. Bills. I knew my letter sent by Noah had to be among them. Judging by the printed envelope, they had already read it. Next to it was a piece of paper with some calculations done by Ted's hand. I didn't want to peek, but the numbers caught my eye. Apparently, they were trying to calculate how much they were going to spend now to maintain the house without my help. The amount was circled twice and accompanied by several exclamation points. I walked out of the house feeling a strange mixture of emotions. On the one hand, satisfaction that my surprise had achieved its purpose. They were beginning to realize the real cost of the life they were leading at my expense. On the other, a prick of conscience. Still, Veronica was my granddaughter, my only remaining family. No, I said to myself, starting the car. They chose this path for themselves. They took advantage of me for years and then called me a burden. Let them learn to live on their own now. Back at Noah's place, I found that he had prepared lunch, simple but delicious. Stew and vegetables, homemade bread that his sister Helen had baked. "How did it go?" he asked as he helped me unload my things. "No one was home," I answered. "But they got the letter, and I guess they've already started counting their expenses." Noah nodded contentedly. It's time for them to learn what real adulthood is like, with full responsibility. After lunch, we settled into his cozy office. Noah pulled out a file folder. "I checked your accounts like you asked," he said. "You have enough savings to live comfortably, plus your pension, of course. But we need to decide what to do with the house in the long run." I sighed, looking at the picture of the house that Noah had placed on the table. It was a picture taken years ago when Esther and I had just finished renovating the front. The house looked fresh, well-maintained, inviting. "I don't want to sell it right now," I said. "It is, after all, my family's house." "I understand," Noah nodded. "And you don't have to make a decision right away. But I'll tell you this as a lawyer. If they're going to live there, you have to get a lease. Otherwise, there could be problems." "Do you think they'll agree to pay the rent?" I asked doubtfully. "Do they have a choice?" Noah shrugged. "If they can't pay, they can move out. Laramie isn't New York City. You can find affordable housing here." I spent the next few days trying to get used to the new routine. Noah and I had breakfast together, and then he usually worked in the garden or on his projects while I read or watched TV. Sometimes we played chess or cards. Sometimes we just talked. About the past, about politics, about books. It was easy for me with Noah. I didn't have to watch every word for fear of ridicule or annoyance. On the 10th day, the phone rang. It was Veronica. "Grandfather," she said without greeting, "we need to talk." "Yes," I answered, trying to keep my voice steady. "Not on the phone. Can we meet? Maybe at Donna's cafe?" I agreed, making an appointment for the next day. When I hung up, Noah looked at me questioningly. "Veronica wants to meet," I explained. "Tomorrow, at a cafe downtown." "Would you like me to go with you?" Noah offered. "No," I shook my head. "I can handle it. It's my family business." "Whatever you say," he nodded. "But I'll be in touch." The night before the meeting, I didn't sleep well. I dreamt of Esther. She stood in our garden among her favorite roses and looked at me with a sad smile. "Clive," she said, "don't lose her. She is all we have left." I woke up with a heavy heart, not knowing how to interpret this dream. A warning? A reminder? A rebuke? Donna's Cafe was my and Esther's favorite place. Small, cozy, with checkered tablecloths and old-fashioned lamps. Veronica was already waiting for me at a table in the corner. She looked tired, shadows under her eyes. "Thanks for coming," she said when I sat down across from her. "What did you want to talk about?" I asked bluntly. Veronica sighed and pulled an envelope out of her bag. Inside were printouts, bills, receipts, notices. "I don't understand," she said, and there was genuine confusion in her voice. How can it cost so much just to live in a house? I looked at the numbers: mortgage, electricity, water, internet, insurance, property taxes. The amounts were impressive but not prohibitive, at least not for two working adults. It's a normal cost of living, Veronica, I said calmly. I've been paying it for years. But this is crazy, she exclaimed. How could you afford all this on a driver's pension? I've always been frugal, I replied, and invested my money wisely. Esther worked too, as you know. We saved, planned, and the house was almost paid off when you moved in. There were only a few years of payments left. And you just, paid for everything? All this time? There was disbelief in her voice. Yes, I nodded. I wanted to help you, give you a chance to get back on your feet. Veronica lowered her eyes, fiddling with her napkin. Grandfather, we can't afford it. Not now. Ted's having trouble at work. His hours have been cut. I don't have a full-time job at the florist. What about your savings? I asked. You must have put away a decent amount in 3 years, living practically for free. She blushed and looked away, and that's when I realized they hadn't saved anything. All those years of paying my bills and buying groceries, they were spending their income on restaurants, gadgets, clothes, traveling. We thought we had more time, Veronica muttered. We planned to start saving next year. 3 years, Veronica, I repeated the words I'd spoken to her the day I left. 3 years you've been living off the books, and you didn't save a dime. We didn't think you'd leave like that. Suddenly, there was a familiar, accusatory tone in her voice. Because of one silly quarrel. It's not fair, Grandpa. I looked at her and saw a child. A spoiled child used to getting everything she wanted. A child who has never faced the consequences of her actions. Unfair? I interjected quietly. It wasn't fair to call me a burden in my own home. It wasn't fair to kick me out of my bedroom. It wasn't fair to use my money without appreciating it. That's what's unfair, Veronica. She sat silent with her head down. When she looked up again, tears glistened in her eyes. What do we do now? She asked, almost in a whisper. You have options, I said calmly. You can find a smaller apartment that you can afford. Or you can stay in the house and pay me rent. I'm willing to set it below market. Or you can find roommates to split the cost. Neighbors? She looked shocked. In your house? With strangers? It's not my house anymore, Veronica, I said. I don't live there. It's just a property that I own, and which you can rent if you want and can afford it. She looked at me as if she were seeing me for the first time. Maybe she did. Perhaps it was the first time she saw not a docile grandfather willing to do anything for his granddaughter, but a man with his own will and dignity. What about the will? The will? She finally asked. Did you really change it? Yes, I confirmed. I left you a certain amount of money, but I plan to sell the house when the time comes. And you're never coming back. There was a note of hope in her voice. No, Veronica, I said firmly. I'm not coming back. I'm fine at Noah's. I feel respected. After that meeting, 2 more weeks passed. I began to get used to life at Noah's house. We established a routine that suited us both. In the mornings, we had breakfast together, discussing the news. Then Noah usually worked in his office. Despite his retirement, he still consulted on legal matters. I tended to the house and garden, feeling satisfied that I could be useful. In the evenings, we sometimes watched old movies or played board games. Once a week, Helen came over with another culinary masterpiece. She was glad I was there. She said it made her feel better about her brother. He's too proud to admit he needs help, she whispered to me once. And now I know he always has someone with him. The call from Ted took me by surprise. Veronica usually kept in touch. Clive, my son-in-law's voice sounded tense. We're having trouble with the bank. They say the mortgage payment is a month late, and they may start foreclosure proceedings. So, pay it, I said simply. We can't get it all together at once, Ted admitted. I tried to negotiate an installment plan, but they won't budge because there's no credit history in our name. All the payments used to come from you. I remained silent, giving him a chance to continue. Clive, I realize that we haven't treated you well, Ted said after a pause. But this is your house we're talking about, your family's legacy. Do you really want the bank to take it? What are you suggesting, Ted? I asked, already guessing the answer. Maybe you could, help with that payment. One last time. And we'll find an apartment in the meantime. I thought about it. The house really meant a lot to me. It was where I had spent most of my life, where my children had been born and raised, where I had lived with Esther. All right, I said at last. I'll make the payment, but you'll only have a month to move out. After that, I'll put the house on the market. For sale? Ted sounded shocked. But I thought we were hoping. What were you hoping for, Ted? I asked tiredly. That I'd change my mind? That I'd start paying all your bills again? That I'd bequeath you the house despite the way you treated me? Clive, people say things in the heat of the moment, he began. He started it. It's not the words, Ted, I interrupted him. It's about actions. It's about the way you've treated me over the years. You haven't respected me. You didn't appreciate my help. You thought I was a burden. Now live with the consequences. I hung up the phone and sat looking out the window at Noah's orchard for a long time. The apple trees had already shed their leaves in preparation for winter. A new season was coming. That evening I told Noah about my conversation with Ted. You made the right decision, he said, pouring us each a glass of whiskey. Home is just walls and a roof. A real home is where you're respected. We sat in his cozy living room sipping whiskey and looking at the fire in the fireplace. Outside the window it was starting to snow, the first snow of the year. You know what I'm thinking about? Noah said suddenly. About our fishing store. Maybe it's time to go back to the old dream. I smiled, feeling warm in my soul and not just from the whiskey. Maybe, I answered. Why not? The next morning the bank manager called. He told me that there was an outstanding balance on my mortgage, and if it wasn't paid off within 5 days, they would be forced to start foreclosure proceedings. I'll pay it, I said, but I need you to know that this house will be on the market soon. I understand, Mr. Hawthorne, the manager replied. I'll send you the paperwork to process the payment. And if I may offer a word of advice in the current market conditions, a house can sell very quickly, especially in a good neighborhood. After talking to the bank, I called Veronica. She didn't pick up. I left a message saying I would pay the arrears, but they had to vacate the house within a month. The same day I received a short message. Thank you, we'll find an apartment. In the evening, Noah and I sat on the veranda, wrapped in plaids and looking out at the falling snow. Helen had made us apple cinnamon pie, the kind Esther liked to make. Clive, Noah said, staring at the snowflakes swirling in the lantern light. I'm glad you're here. The house had been too quiet since Doris died. Doris, Noah's wife, had passed away 10 years ago. I remembered her, an energetic, always smiling woman with a lock of red hair. And I'm glad, Noah, I replied sincerely. Thank you for taking in the old man. What old man? He grinned, lifting his cup of hot cider. All I see are 2 seasoned gentlemen planning to open the best fishing store in Wyoming. I laughed and raised my cup in return. Here's to new beginnings, I said. To new beginnings, Noah echoed. The snow continued to fall, covering the garden with a white blanket. Tomorrow would be a new day and new worries. But right now, in this moment, I felt peaceful. I was in a place where I was valued, where I was respected. And for the first time in a long time, I looked forward to the future with hope. Every day I became more and more accustomed to life in Noah's house. It was a snowy December in Laramie, but it was warm and cozy inside. Noah was a great neighbor, unobtrusive but attentive. We quickly found a rhythm of life together that suited us both. In the mornings, I usually got up first and made breakfast. Noah said my scrambled eggs tasted better than restaurant eggs. It was a simple praise, but it warmed my soul. Unlike Veronica and Ted, he always had kind words for my humble culinary endeavors. After breakfast, we often worked in the garden despite the cold. Noah was proud of his winter-hardy roses, and I helped him cover them for the winter. Gardening had always been a hobby of mine, ever since Esther and I cultivated our own plot. "You have a light hand, Clive," Noah said one day when we had finished pruning the bushes. "Next year, we'll plant more roses, and maybe we'll get a greenhouse." I'd been thinking about it for a long time, but I was too lazy to do it alone. The thought that I would be here next year, that we were planning something together, filled me with quiet joy. For the first time in a long time, I felt like a partner rather than a burden. There was always work to be done around the house, too. Noah had lived alone for 10 years after his wife's death, and although he kept things in order, many little things escaped his attention. I fixed creaking floorboards on the stairs, replaced gaskets and faucets, fixed windows that didn't close properly. My hands remembered the work, and I was eager to get back to the activities that had once been a big part of my life. "You're turning my old house into a palace," Noah joked when I finished painting the kitchen cabinets. "Just returning the favor for the hospitality," I replied, but I actually liked feeling useful. We spent our evenings playing chess or talking. Sometimes Helen, Noah's sister, would join us. She brought home baked goods and the latest city news. She was easy to be with. She didn't demand to keep the conversation going if I wasn't in the mood, and she never talked about my situation with Veronica unless I brought it up. "You're looking better, Clive," she said one evening when Noah came into the kitchen for tea. "I haven't seen you so calm." "Thank you, Helen," I replied sincerely. "I'm really happy here." "Noah, too," she lowered her voice to a whisper. "He'll never admit it, but he's been very lonely since Doris died. You're like a breath of fresh air to him." I smiled, touched by her words. In my 68 years, I suddenly found a new home and a new purpose. In mid-December, with Christmas less than 2 weeks away, Noah and I decided to fulfill a long-time dream and began planning to open a fishing store. "Nothing big," Noah said, spreading a map of the city on the table. "Just a small space somewhere near the lake. Tackle, bait, maybe a few rental boats. And coffee," I added. "Good coffee for fishermen who go out at dawn." We spent the evening discussing details, calculating approximate costs, making a list of what we would need. It was the most enjoyable hours in years, making plans, dreaming, knowing that something good was ahead. I tried to think about Veronica and Ted as little as possible. Sometimes at night I had doubts about whether I was too cruel, whether I should come back, help. But then I remembered Veronica's words, "You're a liability, Clive," and my resolve returned. I checked my bank account. The mortgage payment had been made as I'd promised. With the money left over, they could rent a small apartment and live modestly but decently, if only they had learned to save money. On December 23rd, Noah and I returned from town, where we had bought groceries for Christmas dinner. Helen was coming with her children and grandchildren, and we wanted everything to be perfect. "Look," Noah said as we pulled up to his house. We had company. Outside the porch was Ted's car, the silver sedan he'd bought last year after convincing me to help with the down payment. Veronica and Ted stood on the porch, shuffling from foot to foot in the cold. "Do you want me to ask them to leave?" Noah asked quietly. I shook my head. "No. Let's hear what they have to say." We got out of the car and started unloading the grocery bags. Veronica and Ted came down from the porch to help. "Grandpa," Veronica began, taking one of the bags. "Can we talk?" "Of course," I replied. "Come inside the house. It's too cold to talk outside." Noah led us into the living room, offered us tea, and tactfully withdrew, saying he had work to do in the study. I sat in the chair by the fireplace, Veronica and Ted on the couch across from me. They looked exhausted. Veronica had lost weight, shadows under her eyes. Ted fidgeted nervously with the sleeve of his sweater, a cheap, non-designer sweater, the kind he'd flaunted before. "How are you?" I asked, breaking the awkward silence. "Honestly?" Veronica grinned bitterly. "It's lousy, Grandpa. Just lousy." "We found an apartment," Ted added, "on the south side of town. We moved out last week." "That's good," I nodded. "So my house is vacant now?" "Yes," Veronica confirmed. "We cleaned it out like you asked. We have the keys with us." She took a bunch of keys out of her purse and put them on the coffee table between us. A small brass keychain in the shape of a rose, a gift from Esther, glinted dimly in the firelight. "Thank you," I said, but didn't take the keys. "How are you doing?" Ted and Veronica looked at each other. It was obvious that they'd been preparing for this conversation, rehearsing, perhaps. "Clive," Ted began in a formal tone, "we've come to apologize. The way we treated you was unacceptable. We were selfish and ungrateful, and we are truly sorry for that." I watched him carefully, trying to catch the falseness. Ted spoke smoothly like a well-prepared lawyer, but his eyes were running, not meeting mine. "Grandpa," Veronica picked up on it, "I never should have said those awful words. You're not a burden. You're the most important person in my life, and I was a monster to treat you like that." Her voice shook. Tears glistened in her eyes. I felt something clench in my chest. This was my granddaughter, my last living loved one. She looked so unhappy. "We really want you to come back," Veronica continued, wiping away her tears. "The house, it's empty without you. Cold. It's your house, Grandpa, yours and Grandma's, and we were wrong to try to change it to suit us." "Veronica," I said softly, "I'm not going back. I'm fine here with Noah." "But," she looked at me with despair, "but this isn't your home. This is Noah's home." "Home is where you are respected," I replied, using the words Noah had once said to me. "Here I feel respected, needed, not a burden." Veronica lowered her head, her shoulders shaking with sobs. Ted put his arm around her shoulders, trying to comfort her. "Clive," he said when Veronica had calmed down a little, "we understand that you don't want to go back, but maybe you could help us out financially. Just a little bit, just to get back on our feet. The apartment we rented, it's expensive, and Veronica lost her job. The flower store closed. That's it." I looked at them and felt the remnants of doubt disappear. Their apologies, their tears, it was all just a prelude to asking for money. "What about your savings?" I asked, even though I already knew the answer. "What savings, Grandpa?" Veronica looked up at me with a crying face. "We never had any savings." "But you lived in my house for 3 years," I reminded her. "I paid all the bills, most of the groceries. Where did your paychecks go?" They looked at each other again, and this time there was guilt in their eyes. We didn't plan very well," Ted admitted. "There were expenses, traveling, restaurants. My phone," Veronica added. "And your new car," she looked at Ted. "And a golf membership," he lowered his eyes. I listened to them list their spending habits, and I was amazed. They'd been living large all these years while I'd been paying for the roof over their heads. No saving, no thinking ahead. "And now you expect me to support you again?" I asked you bluntly. "Not support," Ted objected hastily. "Just to help. Temporarily. Till we get back on our feet." "Like last time?" I raised an eyebrow. "When temporarily took 3 years. It'll be different this time," Veronica assured me. "We've already found an apartment, Grandpa. Small but cozy. And Ted is looking for a second job. I'll find something as soon as the holidays are over." I looked at them and saw 2 adults who had never learned to take responsibility for their actions, who thought there was always someone, me, who would solve their problems. "No," I said firmly. "I won't give you money." "Grandpa!" Veronica sounded desperate. "We could lose the apartment. We won't be able to pay next month's rent." You're both able-bodied, I answered calmly. You have education, work experience, find additional sources of income, cut your expenses, live within your means. Easy for you to say, Veronica suddenly exclaimed, and I saw a glimmer of the old, familiar anger in her eyes. You have a house savings, a pension, and we have nothing. You had 3 years to build up your financial cushion, I reminded her. 3 years of living rent-free. What have you done in that time? Veronica opened her mouth for another rant, but Ted squeezed her hand, stopping her. Clive's right, Ronnie, he said suddenly. It's our own fault. We could have lived more frugally, saved. But we chose to spend. She looked at him in amazement, then back at me. Her eyes were a mixture of emotions, anger, despair, shame. What should we do? She asked quietly. What all adults do, I answered. Solve our own problems. There was silence. Veronica sat with her head down, Ted staring at the floor. I could see their hopes for an easy solution to their problems crumbling. Maybe we could go back to the house, Ted suddenly suggested. We'd pay you rent. Not much, but the house will be for sale after New Year's, I said. I've already talked to the realtor. For sale? Veronica looked up at me with a shocked expression. You're selling our house? My house, I corrected. And yes, I'm selling it. I need the money for a new project. What new project? She asked incredulously. Noah and I are opening a fishing store, I explained, fulfilling a long-time dream. Veronica looked at me as if I were speaking a foreign language. A fishing store? At your age? Are you kidding? No, Veronica, I'm dead serious, I replied. At my age, you can still start new things if you have the desire and the strength. And you'll spend the money from the sale of the house on fishing rods? She looked at me in disbelief. Grandpa, that's crazy. This is our family's inheritance that you were hoping to get, I finished for her. But I've decided to dispose of it differently. It's my right. Veronica jumped up, her face red with anger. That old man has turned you against me, she exclaimed, pointing in the direction of the study where Noah was. He wants your money. Veronica! Ted pulled her back, clearly shocked by the outburst. Noah's been my friend for 60 years, I said calmly, though I was seething inside. He'd never asked me for money, unlike some people. That's not fair, Veronica continued to shout. You're supposed to help your family. I'm your granddaughter. Yes, you are my granddaughter, I agreed, standing up. And I loved you from the moment I held you in my arms in the hospital. I would give my life for you, Veronica. But I won't let you take advantage of me. I won't let you disrespect me. And I won't let you think you're entitled to my money just because you're my granddaughter. She stood there, breathing hard, her eyes shooting lightning bolts. I saw in her now not the child I had once loved, but a grown woman, spoiled, selfish, used to getting everything she wanted. You'd better go, I said quietly. I'm not changing my mind. Come on, Ronnie. Ted stood up and took her hand. We have to go. She wrenched her hand away and headed for the exit without saying a word. Ted lingered for a moment. I'm sorry, Clive, he said quietly, for everything. You were right about us. He turned and followed Veronica out. I heard the front door slam, the engine of their car start, the tires rustling on the snow-covered driveway. Noah came out of the office a few minutes later. He didn't ask any questions, just sat down next to me by the fireplace and held out a glass of whiskey. I heard screaming, he said. Veronica had never been the quiet type. She's angry, I said, taking a sip. She thinks I betrayed her by refusing to help her financially. What do you think? I thought about it, staring at the fire in the fireplace. Images of the past floated before my eyes. The little Veronica on the swing I'd made for her. The teenage Veronica reciting poetry at the school concert. Veronica in her wedding dress, so happy and full of hope. And then Veronica screaming that I was a burden. No, I said at last. I didn't betray her. I just stopped letting her take advantage of me." Noah nodded and raised his glass. "Here's to wise decisions," he said. "To wise decisions," I repeated, clinking glasses with his. That night I dreamed about Esther again. She was standing in our garden among the roses and smiling not sadly like last time, but bright and peaceful. "You're doing the right thing, Clive," she said. "Sometimes to love is not to indulge." I woke up with a sense of peace. Snow was falling outside the window, covering the world in a white blanket. Christmas was coming. My first Christmas away from my own home, but near a true friend. Later that day, while helping Noah prepare the house for Helen and her family, I told him about my dream. "You know," he said thoughtfully, "I think Esther would approve of your decision. She's always been a wise woman." "Yes," I agreed, "and she would want Veronica to grow up to be a responsible person, not a spoiled child." "Maybe this trial will help her grow up," Noah suggested. "Teach her to appreciate what she has and not to rely on other people's help." I wish I could believe that, I sighed. On Christmas Eve, Noah's house was filled with laughter and conversation. Helen arrived with her 2 sons, their wives, and 5 grandchildren. The kids were running around the house, playing snowballs in the yard, unwrapping presents under the Christmas tree. I felt part of this large, noisy, loving family. At the holiday dinner, Helen raised a glass of champagne. "To Clive," she said with a warm smile. "Our newest member of the family." Everyone raised their glasses, even the kids with their apple juice. I looked at their smiling faces and felt a warmth spill into my chest. I wasn't alone. I wasn't a burden. I was where I was accepted for who I was. In the evening, when the guests had gone to their rooms, Noah and I stayed in the living room, enjoying the quiet after the noisy day. "Thank you," I said to him, "for everything." "For what?" he grinned. "For having an old friend over? Come on, Clive. I'm the one who should be thanking you. You breathed life into this house." We sat in silence, staring at the dying fire in the fireplace. Outside the window, the snow continued to fall, covering the past and opening the way for the future. "You know," Noah said, breaking the silence, "I think we should start looking for a store right after the new year. Let's not put the dream on hold." "Let's not," I agreed. "We still have plenty of time to realize it." He smiled and raised his glass with the rest of the champagne. "To new beginnings," he said. "To new beginnings," I echoed. I didn't know what lay ahead of me. I didn't know how Veronica and Ted would turn out. I didn't know how successful Noah and I would make the store. But for the first time in a long time, I looked to the future without fear, with hope and confidence. I was once again the captain of my own destiny, not a passenger on someone else's ship. And it was a good feeling, a very good feeling. Winter was slowly giving way to spring. The snow in Laramie was beginning to melt, revealing thawed areas where the first shy blades of grass were already sprouting. My decision to sell the house was final, and in early January I officially put it on the market. The realtor, Alicia Patterson, an energetic middle-aged woman, was optimistic. "The market is brisk right now, Mr. Hawthorne," she said as she photographed rooms for the listing, "especially for these well-maintained homes in nice neighborhoods. I think we'll have offers in a week or 2. I nodded, walking her through the rooms I'd lived in most of my life. Strangely, I didn't feel any longing or regret. It was just a house, walls, roof, foundation. The real home was now where I was respected and appreciated. "Do you know what price you want to ask yet?" Alicia asked when we finished looking at the house. Noah, who had come with me, answered before I could open my mouth. "At least market value. The house is in excellent condition. The grounds are well maintained. The neighborhood is upscale." I smiled, grateful for his support. Noah was always better at financial matters. "Sure," Alicia nodded. "I'll do a comparable sales analysis of the neighborhood and come up with the best price." When we left the house and got into the car, Noah put his hand on my shoulder. "Are you okay, Clive?" I looked back at the house 2 stories, with a porch I'd built myself 20 years ago, with rose bushes Esther had planted. Yes, I answered, and it was the truth. I'm all right. Good woman, that Alicia, Noah remarked as we pulled away. Knows her stuff. If she says the house will go fast, it will. I hope so, I said. The sooner we get the money, the sooner we can start our project. The project we'd been talking about was taking more and more concrete shape. After Christmas, Noah and I got serious about finding a place for our fishing store. We visited several options, but none of them was completely satisfactory. It was too far from the lake, or too cramped, or required major repairs. We'll find one, Noah said confidently. We have time to choose the best one. His optimism energized me too. 68 years old, not youth, of course, but not the end of life. We both still had plenty of energy and enthusiasm for the new endeavor. That evening, when we got home from our meeting with the realtor, Veronica called. I hadn't heard from her since Christmas when she and Ted had come to ask for money. Grandpa, her voice sounded unusually subdued. I heard you put the house on the market. Yes, I confirmed. This morning. I understand, she said after a pause. It's your house and you have the right to use it as you wish. I was surprised by this calm tone. No accusations, no hysterics. Veronica, are you all right? I asked with sudden concern. Yes, she sighed. It's just, a lot has changed in the last month. Ted and we've talked about a lot of things, a lot of rethinking. I'm glad to hear that, I said carefully. Still not sure where she was going with this. Grandfather, I won't ask you for money, Veronica continued. I won't beg you not to sell the house. I just wanted to say, I'm sorry. About the way we treated you, about what I said, it was unforgivable. I sat there stunned by her words. This wasn't the same Veronica who'd yelled at me a month ago. What happened, Veronica? I asked her bluntly. Why such a change? She was silent for a moment, then answered quietly. Reality happened, Grandpa. Ted lost his job. I still can't find anything stable. We're barely making ends meet. And you know what? It made us realize how much you've done for us all these years. How ungrateful we've been. Ungrateful. I listened without interrupting. For the first time in a long time, Veronica spoke to me sincerely, without manipulation or ulterior motives. We moved into a tiny apartment in the suburbs, she continued. 1 bedroom, a small kitchen, no garden, no veranda. Ted got a job at a supermarket, not a law firm, of course, but something. I waitress 3 days a week. It's hard, I said, not knowing what else to say. Yeah, she agreed. But you know what? This is our life. It's real. No illusions. No waiting for someone else to solve our problems. And strangely enough, there's something right. I smiled even though she couldn't see it. You've grown up, Veronica. I had to. A note of humor flickered in her voice. Better late than never, right? We talked some more. She told me about her plans to get a job in her specialty, about how Ted was learning to cook to save money on restaurants. Not once did she ask for money or hint at help. Before saying goodbye, she said, I hear you're going to open a store with Noah. That's great, Grandpa. You both deserve it. After that conversation, I sat in my chair, looking out the window at the darkening sky. Something had changed, not just in Veronica, but in me. The heaviness I'd been carrying in my heart had let go a little. Noah found me there an hour later, still deep in thought. Good news? He asked, noticing the look on my face. I don't know, I answered honestly. But something had definitely changed. I told him about my conversation with Veronica. Noah listened attentively, not interrupting. You know, Clive, he said when I was done, sometimes people need to fall down to learn how to get up. Maybe that's what happened with Veronica and Ted. Maybe, I agreed, but I'm still not sure I can trust them again. You don't have to, Noah shrugged. At least not right away. Trust is earned over time. Just leave the door ajar. Don't slam it completely shut. I nodded, realizing the wisdom of his words. I wasn't ready to let Veronica and Ted back into my life again, but maybe in the future, if they really did change. 2 weeks after putting the house on the market, as Alicia had predicted, the offers started coming in. The first two were well below the asking price, and we declined them. The third was more acceptable, but still not high enough. Take your time, Noah advised. The market is booming. Let's wait a little longer. His patience paid off. At the beginning of February, an offer came in, even a little higher than our price. A young family with 2 children fell in love with the house at first sight and was willing to pay more to get ahead of other potential buyers. What do you think? I asked Noah when Alicia informed us about it. Good price, decent people, he nodded. I'd take the offer. So we did. The paperwork process took a few weeks, but by early March the deal was closed. I received a check for a sum that not only covered all of our plans to open the store, but also left enough to live comfortably for the foreseeable future. Feeling rich? Noah joked as we drove back from the bank where I had deposited the money. I feel free, I replied. And that's better than being rich. It was around this time that we finally found the perfect space for our store. It was a small building on the shore of Lake Cummer, formerly owned by an old fisherman named Henry Milligan, who had decided to retire permanently and move to Florida with his daughter. It's a sign, Noah said as we looked around the place. Henry and I always competed to see who could catch the most trout. Now he's passing the baton to us. The building needed repairs, but the foundation was solid. Plus, there was a small dock attached where we could keep boats for rent. We entered into a lease agreement with an option to buy in 3 years if things went well. Work began on turning the old fishing cabin into the store of our dreams. Noah took care of the paperwork side. Licenses, permits, insurance. I took over the renovations and furnishings. Work boiled over, and by mid-April the major remodeling was complete. We decided to call the store Hawthorne and Page. Everything for real fishing, just as we had dreamed of when we were young. Helen, Noah's sister, painted the sign with a lake, fishing rods, and 2 silhouettes of fishermen against the sunset. One day, as I was painting the walls in the future sales room, an unexpected visitor appeared at the door. Veronica. She stood uncertainly, holding a small box in her hands. "Grandpa, may I come in?" I nodded, dipping my paintbrush into the can of paint. "Come in, just be careful. It's not all dry yet." She looked around with genuine interest. "It looks great. When's the opening?" "In 2 weeks, if everything goes according to plan," I said, wiping my hands with a rag. "What brings you here?" Veronica handed me a box. "I found it when we were moving. Thought you might need it for the store." I opened the box and froze. Inside were old pictures of me and Noah with our first big catch on Lake Cammer when we were 16, me driving my first truck, Esther and me picnicking by the lake, little Veronica with the fishing rod I'd given her for her 8th birthday. I thought, maybe you might want to hang them in the store, Veronica said quietly. As part of the story. I stared at the pictures, feeling a lump come up in my throat. "Thank you," I said finally. "It means a lot to me." We stood in silence. There was no need for words. Something important was beginning to re-establish itself between us, slowly, carefully, like the first sprouts after a long winter. "How are you doing?" I asked. "You and Ted?" "Better," she answered with a slight smile. "I got a job at the new flower store. Part-time for now, but they're promising to expand. Ted's still at the supermarket, but he's been promoted to shift manager." "That's good," I nodded. "How's the apartment?" "It's small," she shrugged. "But we're getting used to it. We're learning to save money. Ted's even got a notebook where he writes down all his expenses." I smiled as I pictured the pedantic Ted with a notebook of expenses. "Grandpa," Veronica suddenly said seriously, I'm not asking you to come back or help us with money. I want you to know that I understand why you left. And you were right." I looked at her, this young woman with tired eyes but a straight back. She was no longer the spoiled girl who called me a burden. "Thank you," I said simply. She nodded and turned to leave. "Good luck with the store, Grandpa. I'll be there for the opening if you don't mind." "I'd love to see you," I replied. "And Ted, too." After she left, I sat going through the pictures, reminiscing. When Noah came back with lunch, I showed him Veronica's gift. "Look at that," he grinned, looking at our youthful catch. "How skinny we were, and hairy." We laughed, and I felt the last vestiges of bitterness leave my heart. Not all had been forgiven, not all had been forgotten, but perhaps not all was lost. The opening of the Hawthorne and Page store was on the first Saturday in May, when the fishing season was in full swing. We had prepared everything from fishing rods and bait to a coffee maker with homemade cookies that Helen had baked. In the morning, before the doors opened to the first customers, Noah and I stood on the dock looking out over the calm surface of the lake. "Remember how we used to dream about this when we were kids?" he asked, smoking a pipe, the only bad habit he ever allowed himself. "I remember," I nodded. "Only then we imagined ourselves young, in the prime of life. And it turned out even better." Noah let out a puff of smoke. "Now we have experience, wisdom, and free time. What could be better?" I smiled, looking at the rising sun, coloring the lake golden. He was right. All in good time. The first day of work exceeded all our expectations. News of the opening spread throughout the small town, and fishermen, from professionals to amateurs, came to see what we had to offer. To our surprise, the most popular item was not the merchandise, but the coffee and story corner we had set up at the far end of the store. Old fishermen came in, took a cup of coffee, and told about their catches, secret spots, how the lake had changed over the years. The young people listened with their mouths open. It was exactly what we dreamed of, not just a store, but a place to meet, share experiences, and make friends. Toward evening, when the flow of visitors began to thin, Veronica and Ted appeared. They looked a little awkward, but they brought a small gift, a handmade model of a fishing boat. "Ted carved it himself," Veronica explained. "He turned out to be quite a good wood carver." "Impressive," I said sincerely, looking at the detailed model. "You have talent, Ted." He smiled embarrassedly, and I noticed the change in his face, the condescending mask he'd always worn with me gone. Now he looked normal, human. "We wanted to congratulate you on your opening," Veronica said. "The store looks great." "Thank you." I pointed to the wall where the pictures she'd brought were already hanging. "Your gift has found its place, too." She smiled, and in that smile there was something of the little girl I had once loved so much. "Grandfather," she said quietly, "I know that I've ruined a lot of things, and I don't expect you to forgive me right away, but maybe, in time, I nodded. "Let's just start over, one step at a time." She nodded, her eyes glistening with tears. Ted put his arm around her shoulders, supporting her. "We'll try harder, Clive," he said seriously, "to be better, to earn your trust again." I looked at them, two young people who were perhaps finally starting to grow up, and felt a strange mixture of emotions. Not complete forgiveness, no, but not a final breakup either. "Come by sometime," I said. "Let me know how things are going." They left, and I turned back to Noah, who was watching our conversation from a distance. "How's it going?" he asked. "Peace?" "Not exactly," I answered honestly. "But a truce, perhaps." He nodded understandingly. "Time will tell if they are sincere." "Time will tell," I agreed. In the evening, when we closed up store after a successful first day, Noah and I sat on the dock watching the sun set over the lake. We had 2 fishing rods next to us, We'd decided to end the day the way we'd started all our adventures in our youth, fishing. "You know, Clive," Noah said, watching the float, "I'm glad we lived to see this day, that we've realized our dream." "I'm glad too," I replied, feeling peaceful. Who would have thought that at our age we could start over? "It's never too late for a new chapter," Noah said philosophically, "especially if you write it with the right people." I nodded, looking out at the sunset. The right people, that's what mattered. Not the walls of a house, not material possessions, not even family ties per se, but people who respected you, valued you, saw you as a person, not a burden. Noah's float twitched, and he hooked with unexpected speed for his age. "Yes!" he exclaimed with boyish delight. "Looks like a big one." I helped him pull out the trout, a really big one, at least 4 pounds. "Hawthorne and Page's first catch," he said, holding up the fish. "That's a good sign, don't you think?" "Very good," I agreed, pulling out my camera. "Let's capture it for history." I took the picture, Noah holding the trout against the sunset with a proud smile. Another picture for our wall of stories. Later, as we drove home with our catch for tomorrow's dinner, I thought about the journey I've traveled over the past few months, from a man who felt like a burden in his own home to an equal partner in a new endeavor, from loneliness among loved ones to true friendship and support. I didn't know how my relationship with Veronica and Ted would play out in the future. Maybe their changes were genuine and in time we could build a new, healthy relationship. Or maybe we wouldn't. But now it no longer defined my life, no longer hung heavy on my heart. I had a friend who respected me, a business that was fulfilling, a home where I felt welcome, and most importantly, a sense of self-worth that I regained when I decided to walk away from a toxic relationship. At 68, I was beginning a new chapter of my life, and it promised to be better than any previous one.